I come to the floor today to pay tribute to an extraordinary Iowan with whom I shared a decade-long friendship with, a very prominent Democrat from my state. Over this past weekend, former Iowa Congressman Berkley Bedell passed away at age of 98. For nearly a century of life, Berkley took his grandmother's advice to heart. Quote, "You can do almost anything within reason if you will only set your mind to it," end of quote. From an early age, Berkley Bedell set his mind to a high standard of achievement. He set an example for the rest of us. He practiced what he preached, and he made a difference in this world. As a child raised during the Great Depression, Berkley became a soldier in the U.S. Army, obviously a World War II veteran, an entrepreneur and job creator, a philanthropist, a policy influencer, and most of all, a devoted husband and father. What I left out is how I got acquainted with him. He was a fellow member of the House of Representatives during my early years and for some time after I came to the United States Senate. Our decades-long friendship began when Berkley and I were elected to serve Iowans in the U.S. House of Representatives. That was in 1974. Soon after the orientation for new members, Barbara and I developed a close relationship with Eleanor and Berkley. This friendship remained for the next 45 years. Now, looking back, those were lonely days for a freshman Republican House member. That's when the Watergate scandal upended midterm elections. Voters elected 91 new House members to that Congress, and I happened to be the only Republican in the Iowa congressional delegation. Among our so-called Watergate class of 1974, I was joined by Iowans Tom Harkin, Michael Bluen, and Berkley Bedell. We were all freshman members of the Congress. We joined then with more senior members from the state of Iowa, Neil Smith, who went on to serve 36 years in the House, and Ed Medvinsky. Senators from Iowa were Democrat Dick Clark and John Culver. Berkley would go on to represent Iowa's 6th congressional district for 6 terms, from 1975 to 1987, and I presume he would have served a lot longer if his health had held out, even though he's lived another 30, added up, about another 32 years after that. Although Berkley and I didn't share the same political points of view, we did share a common approach for representative government, meaning with dialogue and feedback that was very necessary from our Iowans if we were going to represent them properly, and most often the forum for that was our respective town hall meetings. Throughout our service together in Congress, party labels didn't displace our ability to work with and for Iowans. As one example, during the farm crisis of the 1980s, which is much worse than this farm crisis we have right now, we used our voices to raise public awareness and steer help to struggling farm communities in our home state. We did everything possible to shape farm policy and restore hope to thousands of farm families coping with double-digit inflation and with the farm debt crisis. As a federal lawmaker, Berkley took his oversight work seriously. Even though I take oversight seriously, I didn't do it quite the way he did. Kind of an unorthodox approach. He would just venture willy-nilly into a federal bureaucracy here or a federal bureaucracy over there. He took the liberty of dropping in person at these agencies, and he did it in a way of going up to people and saying, "What's your job?" I don't know exactly the questions he asked, but knowing Berkley the way I do, I think he probably wanted to have a very calm conversation with them to determine what they did and maybe even see if they were doing it right, and particularly if they're spending the taxpayers' money right. So he wanted to do this to keep tabs on how these federal employees in these various bureaucracies were serving the nation and particularly serving Iowans. Now that's what I'd call an in-the-flesh gut check, a very different type of oversight that I have done. Berkley was born in Spirit Lake, Iowa, and I assume lived his entire life in Spirit Lake, Iowa until he spent some retirement time in Florida and the period of time he was in the military. Spirit Lake, Iowa is a close-knit farming community in Dickinson County. His neck of the woods is located in the Iowa Great Lakes region, a regional destination for fishing, boating, and outdoor recreation. And I'll bet the presiding officer's been there many times. The area is fondly known as the University of Okoboji, where generations of families go year after year to vacation and enjoy life. And by the way, the University of Okoboji is not really a university, but it's very much a selling point from an economic development point of view for that part of the state, and has worked very successfully. So, as I just described to you, this is where Berkley's insatiable work ethic took root. It guided him for his nearly 100 years of life on Earth. Through philanthropic good works, he leaves behind a legacy of conservation, stewardship, and historic preservation. With his wife, he helped launch the Okoboji Foundation more than 3 decades ago. Since then, the foundation has awarded millions of dollars to scores of nonprofit organizations in that Lakes region of Iowa. Berkley believed in paying it forward, in other words. He cared deeply about giving back to his community for future generations to enjoy. As you would expect an Iowan to do, he rolled up his sleeves, opened his wallet, and pitched in to make a difference. By my measure, he represents a life well lived and lived life well. As I mentioned earlier, Berkley and Eleanor became steadfast friends with Barbara and this senator. We shared an abiding mutual respect and cherished their gracious regard for that friendship. After the Bedells moved to Florida in retirement, Barbara and I enjoyed an annual gift each February from the Bedells. Very simple annual gift, but one that had a lot of meaning to it, more than the material that it represented, because they sent us a box of oranges from their home state of Sunshine, just as regular as a clock. We received these over many, many years. Through these many years, their annual Christmas letter was something that we look forward to. And many years, they even thanked us with personal notes for our friendship in that very letter. Berkley also stayed in touch with a friendly Valentine note each year to my wife, Barbara. With Berkley's passing, we are saddened to know that these tokens of friendship now come to an end. Berkley's story is an inspiration for younger generations of Americans pursuing their dreams. It's never too early to dream big. So this was how Berkley Bedell was dreaming as a 16-year-old. He became an entrepreneur. Berkley launched a fish and tackle business called Berkley Fly Company with his brother Jack. I'm told he started the company with $50 from paper route money. He started tying fly fishing lures in his bedroom, pouring years of sweat equity into the family business, boosted the local economy, and created jobs in his beloved Iowa Great Lakes. His tenacious leadership developed a strong workforce for what was then called Berkley Industries. Today, that company, which is now called Pure Fishing, is one of the leading fishing tackle manufacturers in the world. At 98 years young, Berkley didn't let age slow him down by any stretch of the imagination. He remained active in public policy making and immersed in electoral politics in Iowa, and usually at least once a year called on me in my Hart office building here in Washington to tell me about some legislative issue he was interested in, and we worked together on some of those legislative issues. Now, everything here in Washington is so political, so this may sound very unusual, and maybe today it is unusual. But despite our different political philosophies, he was a Democrat, I'm a Republican. We both appreciate how crucial it is to engage the next generation in civic life. Berkley's leadership and legacy will be remembered for generations to come. I'm proud to call him a very good friend. Barbara and I extend our condolences to sons Ken and Tom and daughter Joanne. Your dad made a big footprint in his life's journey. As my former colleague in the House of Representatives, Berkley later became my constituent when I was elected to serve here in the United States Senate. I never have known Berkley Bedell to stop advocating for his community and for the good of our nation. It became Berkley's lifelong hallmark to leave God's green earth better than he found it for generations to come. So, I wish Godspeed to my good friend Berkley Bedell, who joins his beloved wife Eleanor in eternal life. I yield the floor.